first of all, thank you very much for coming this evening and making your way through extremely hostile conditions, the tube and all the rest of it. The reason we're doing these salons, as I said last time, before I introduce our very special guest, is that we want here at the New Culture Forum to be the basis, actually, of like-minded people who can associate, get together, at a time where, frankly, we need as much of our morale boosting as well as possible. There's nothing wrong in that. We need that because we're not going to get it from anywhere else. And it's very, very important that we associate as well together and get to know each other and make connections. Delighted that David here, who's been on our channel, I think it's 3 or 4 times now, David, and he's come to just address us with a few words. Before he does, I would just like to say that we've got a lot of our new members here, and they've come from, in some cases, like Lincolnshire and places like this. Thank you very much for coming. Your support means so much to us, and this is extremely important. That your enthusiasm is incredibly important to us. The New Culture Forum has actually been in Hungary this past week, making a documentary about Hungary. So I'm delighted that we also have some members, some people from the Hungarian embassy. Where are they hiding? There they are.
And Petra is there.
And Petra is there. Thank you very much.
Yes. Flamboyant.
So we have our friends from the Hungarian embassy. A wonderful time in Hungary, where I might add, there is such a thing as a Scruton Cafe, which is where I bought this. David, I thought you might see it too.
Oh my lord, yes.
I think it is very, very good. This is, I think it's a pretty good likeness, actually.
Very good.
It's not bad, yes.
But can you believe, if we were...
It needs a flag.
Would there be such a
It needs a
thing?
cigarette in its mouth.
And a hunting
Would there be
one.
such a thing as a Scruton Cafe? I don't think so. Anyway, one of the issues that's on our mind is the Ukraine. I think David's going to touch on this. So without further ado, thank you very much, David. Thank you.
Peter, ladies and gentlemen, I thought today we had to at least not fall far too short of events. It's very difficult to match them unless one were a Churchill. And Churchill, of course, got Putin long before everybody else. Churchill, in his extraordinary biography, his great ancestor, the Duke of Marlborough, makes a wonderful analysis of Louis XIV as this combination of infinite mediocrity, absolute violence at home and abroad, and he captures perfectly. And it is that analysis of Louis XIV that Churchill uses as the basis not only of his understanding of Hitler, but many of the great speeches and phrases that are directed against Hitler. And so it seems to me that far too much attention has been given in all this to analysing the oddity of Putin. I don't think Putin is odd at all. I think Putin falls into an absolutely characteristic type. On the other hand, of course, Putin is infinitely remote from our sense of values in the West now. He is an unashamedly deployer of power. That is the key to understanding in exactly the same way that Louis XIV was, that Hitler was. The idea of absolute power at home, absolute power abroad. The question as to whether they are mad or not simply seems to me to be redundant. They have a different way of looking at the world. Of course, set up with this figure of profound hostility of Putin, somebody who we can all recognise as being mad and bad, or we think he's mad, he's actually just bad, we've then tended to identify the Ukrainians as being fundamentally like us. They're not. Absolutely not, it seems to me. Let's look at what's happened. Let's look at the incidents that have unrolled before us. First, of course, we have Zelensky himself, emerging as a hero in a more than Churchillian mode. That extraordinary, off the cuff, I suspect, rather like Churchill's all Churchill's best remarks, carefully rehearsed, I need ammunition, not a ride. Remaining in the centre, dressed in fatigues, taking the risk of assassination, taking the risk of a stray rocket at the heart of things, This is Beowulf. This isn't now. This isn't now. Now look at Whitehall here, this vast fortress designed to keep the dangerous thing called the citizen out. This is a different, direct, infinitely, although it uses a great many foul words, and I mean, he's whatever the Hungarian fuck is, I thought I was going to begin to learn it. He uses it so frequently. Although it's foul-mouthed, it is genuinely heroic leadership. And the scenes we've seen, women giving soldiers sunflower seed, so that when they die, their bodies will at least be used and they produce a flower. And then the principal trope, people standing on bridges in isthmuses, knowing they're going to be killed, and defiant. What world is this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's the world, isn't it, of... I tried to think, and then suddenly, does everybody remember, do we still do at school, does anybody still read Macaulay? Does anybody read the Lays of Ancient Rome, extraordinary, Last Porsenus of Clusium, by the 7 gods he swore, that the great house of Tarquin, Horatius at the bridge? Let me read. This is the great scene in which the supporters of the kings of Rome are invading, attacking Rome itself. There's a single bridge. The army approaches. If they take that bridge, the city will fall. And one man, Horatius, stands forward, and he steps forward and he consults the consul, and he says, "Then outspoke brave Horatius, the captain of the gate, to every man upon this earth, death cometh soon or late. How can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods, and for the tender mother who dandled him to rest, and for the wife who nurses his baby at her breast, and for the holy maidens who feed the eternal flame, to save them from false Sextus that wrought the deed of shame? Who down the bridge, Sir Consul, with all the speed he may, I with 2 more to help me will hold the foe in play. In yon straight path 1,000 may well be stopped by 3. Now, who will stand on either hand and keep the bridge with me?" Isn't this what we've been seeing? Can you imagine the British Army now doing the same? Can you imagine our Navy that surrendered to a little inflatable in the Gulf? Do you not all recall that scene of absolute shame and surrender? And they weren't shot. In the 18th century, they would have been shot. Because cowardice, even especially of an admiral, especially of an officer, was punished by shooting. So they're different from us now. But those scenes you can replicate with every single moment of 18th century English history. Listen to Nelson. "A sudden glow of patriotism was kindled within me, and presenting king and country as my patron. Well, then I exclaimed, I will be a hero and brave and by divine providence, brave every danger. I will be a hero." Go into Westminster Abbey. Go into particularly St. Paul's. Look at those other heroes. Look at Wolfe, who again dies on the heights of Abraham in that great moment of the 7 Years' War when Canada falls to the English. Look at the monument, the absurd, wonderful, preposterous monument to Captain Faulkner in Westminster Abbey, where, do you know what he did? He's 22. He has already been hailed, actually with Handel, "Hail the conquering hero comes," when he single-handedly takes a French fort in 1794. In 1795, he's captain of a tiny frigate. A much larger French vessel bears down on them and thinks it's going to crush them, so its bowsprit comes amidships. What does he do? He lashes the bowsprit to the capstan, so he can then direct a permanent broadside into the ship, which he takes and dies, of course, at the moment of victory, and there he is recorded. What are all these people fighting for? What are the Ukrainians fighting for? Are they fighting for the rule of law? Are they fighting for, an international code of values? Are they fighting for a world order based upon the United Nations? Are they fighting for universal human rights? They're not. They're fighting for hearth and home and country. They are fighting arguably in the most primitive way. There is this sense of the rootedness in place, that passionate patriotism. Well, patriotism's a bit too weak a word, isn't it? There's a savagery about it. There is an absolute determination that anybody who trespasses, just like ancient Rome, anybody who trespasses on that territory is an enemy and to be destroyed. And it's interesting, we have represented Hungarian embassy here. I think I am right in saying, again, we've carefully suppressed what the nature of the Ukraine is because we're all on their side. But it's not exactly a liberal country. As I understand it, the educational policies deny ethnic minorities the opportunity to be taught in their own languages beyond the age of 9. Right? This is a reassertion and an imposition of a specific form of ethnic identity. These are deeply uncomfortable thoughts, aren't they? What we've got to address, it seems to me, is their sense of rootedness in their country, their sense of rootedness, don't use the word, in their race, their people, their sense of rootedness in their history. And these are very difficult questions, but I think they touch us profoundly. Because it's appropriate, we've got the bust of Roger Scruton here. A conservatism has fundamentally, and this is our terrible problem, a conservatism has fundamentally to be rooted in history and in the tradition of a country. It cannot be rooted in anything else. Roger and others tried to begin with to have a kind of universal conservatism that was rooted essentially in theology. In God as the idea and the origin of values. That will not work. What we've got to recognize, isn't it, as the Ukrainians do, there are no such things as universal values. There is no such thing as international law. There is no such thing as universal human rights. There are things which are specific to nations. Disraeli says it better than anybody else. A conservative party that is not a national party is nothing. We have to re-confront this. We have to re-understand it. And the only way you can now be a national party is with a particular address and understanding and comprehension of the history of your country. And of course, we are uniquely fortunate. Again, we must all have had that sense of, dare I say it, English exceptionalism. British exceptionalism, it's really English, looking at those horrors of Eastern Europe and thinking that the last time there was anything comparable in England is the Civil War in the 17th century. There is English exceptionalism. We have had a society which is capable of a history which reconciles. Look around here. You have Charles I, a statue of him at the top of Whitehall, where the traffic was stopped when I tried to get here. And at the other end, you've got the statue of the man who executed him. You've got Cromwell. That sense of a history that can reconcile, that can hold together, that can encompass. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to learn from the Ukraine. We need, once again, to understand that this universalism simply does not work. A conservative cannot believe in universal values. Values are specific to a culture. Again, everybody talks as though there is a world community. That world that believes in rules is effectively Europe and the Anglosphere. 20% only of countries are democratic. Today, Pakistan actually signs an agreement with Putin. Actually signs an agreement. In other words, we're deluded when we think that there is this, this international world order, the vital importance of the United Nations, the infinite absurdity of talking of summoning Putin before the International Court of Justice. All of this is the merest utter unreality. If we are to survive as a nation, and I use that word very seriously, we have once again to address this question of belonging, identity, and nationhood, and an understanding, a welcoming and comprehension of our history. And we've got to realise there are people who are real enemies of it. There is no doubt whatever that the whole of the BLM, the whole of critical race theory, has a single purpose. It is to delegitimate that history, which is the only basis for the existence of our society. Not for nothing is the Palace of Westminster built in the Gothic style. It's there to say we do not owe our history, we do not owe our freedoms to a specific moment of constitutional creation. It's saying those freedoms are intrinsic, they are immemorial, they have always been here. It's a myth, but it's not a very big myth, since literally those freedoms, literally our political structure, literally the use of that building as the world's mother of parliaments, principal representative assembly, does go back to Magna Carta. We have to understand this, we have to use it, we have to propagandize it, and we have to tell people if we don't, we will fall. We will not do what the Ukrainians have done. We will not have that courage. We will not show that heroism. There has to be, finally, as Roger, better than anybody else, said, the foundation of political trust, the foundation of political alignment is not rational. It is irrational. It is a product of where you're born, the culture into which you were born. No sillier phrase has ever been written. As I always say, all bad ideas are French, but no sillier phrase has ever been written than that of Rousseau. Man is born free. He's not. He's not. Think of Augustine. You're born with piss and shit. You are absolutely helpless. You are dependent for years. You are a creature of your parents. All of those things that are listed by Macaulay there. The place you're born, the mother who rears you, the woman you love, and so on. You're a product of all of those things. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do think we've got a lot of lessons to learn from what's happening in the Ukraine. We've obviously got to learn the lessons that the world isn't safe, that there isn't a world order to which we can appeal. We've got to learn above all the lesson that other people have different values from us. And finally, and again, as conservatives, we should be willing to recognise this, no state can survive that can't defend itself. And the erosion of our armed forces, the rendering of ourselves utterly vulnerable in terms of fuel and so on, is an act of folly which seems to me to be unforgivable. I'm not going to go back and recite dear old Macaulay again, but that sense of the man on the bridge, attached to his country, to his place, not to some vast system of universal values, recognizing these different, not better, simply different. We as conservatives essentially have to depend on that specificity, that rootedness, that sense of place, of history, and of time.
Hello, and thank you for watching David Starkey Talks. If, as I very much hope, you're enjoying them, why not become more actively involved and join my members club? As a member, you'll be able to take part in the members-only weekly question and answer session, suggest topics for forthcoming videos, and have priority booking for my forthcoming live events. And while you're at it, why not have a look at the store page on my website, davidstarkey.com. There you can purchase t-shirts and other merchandise, buy signed copies of my books, and, if you're feeling brave and a bit flush, even arrange to take me out to lunch. Thank you once again for watching. I look forward to hearing from you and to welcoming you to my members club.
To our channel.